and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our second series of USM.CREATE Talk here on our Facebook page. My name is Andy City, and I am so honored to be hosting today's event. We have a very special guest today to talk about this interesting topic about local knowledge. But before we move on to our main agenda, let me introduce you. What is actually USM.CREATE? USM.CREATE at Georgetown is actually an acronym for Creative Regenerative Environment for Talented Artists and Entrepreneurs. Create USM is a space positioned to foster the artistic talent, design exploration, and technological scene for artists, entrepreneurs, community, and industry within Penang and Southeast Asia. USM.CREATE is a special avenue to help showcase your work by supporting your talents and hone your creative ability. We are hoping that the emergence of this new platform will cultivate the culture and the spirit of networking and partnership between USM communities and the industry, and also the involvement of the local communities. USM.CREATE is actually located in the heart of Georgetown at Lebuh Cina, inside the Think City building. So let's take a look at this video to give you a clearer picture of the space. Check it out. We are waiting for our friend to play the video of USM.CREATE. If you'd like to know more about USM.CREATE, you can check us on Facebook, on Instagram, USM.CREATE. Have you on board. Okay, so I think that's all for the introduction of USM.CREATE. Now let's proceed with our main agenda. And first and foremost, I would like to thank the Secretariat of Local Knowledge USM for agreeing to be part of this collaboration. And talking about local knowledge, I have such great memories with the group. Okay, so what is local knowledge? Local knowledge refers to knowledge and expertise which originate from local and indigenous cultures that have developed over time. Its practices have been absorbed naturally and effortlessly into the local communities. The study on local knowledge is aimed at enabling social transformation through a paradigm shift that forefronts local epistemology. So the serious study of local knowledge or local wisdom was initially the brainchild of former Vice Chancellor of USM, Professor Tan Sri Dato Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Professor Dato Sri Dr. Muhammad Salleh Yaapar, and Emeritus Professor Dr. Muhammad Haji Salleh. So under their support and guidance, the Local Knowledge Study Group was established in 2010 with volunteers from the Student Development Affairs Department led by Tuan Haji Moghni appointed as its secretariat. In 2011, Professor Dr. Badaruddin Muhammad, the first chairman of the Local Knowledge Group, established a repository center for documentation of research on local knowledge with Associate Professor Saad Othman as repository coordinator. The group was fortunate to receive guidance from Professor Dato Sri Salleh in all its undertaking through the years, as he was appointed by USM as Local Knowledge Advisor since its inception. The following year, under the stewardship of Professor Dato Omar Osman, former Vice Chancellor of USM, and led by Professor Badaruddin Mohammed, obtained a KPT research grant to conduct interconnected transdisciplinary research projects on local knowledge in collaboration with academics from other local IPTAs, including UKM, UMK, UNIMAS, and UMS. As part of the research activities of the Local Knowledge Group, regional and international conferences on local knowledge have been organized since 2011, primarily at various locations in Malaysia, but also once in Bandung, Indonesia in 2015. The research group has also been responsible for publishing more than 40 books under USM Press that focus on different aspects of local knowledge from the perspective of various disciplines, including the arts, traditional healing, education, various branches of the sciences and medical sciences, history and archaeology, geography, as well as performance studies and literary studies. Subsequent chairperson of the Local Knowledge Group, Professor Dr. Salleh, the Dean of the School of Languages, Literacies and Translation, and Associate Professor Dr. A.S. Hardy from School of the Arts have maintained its primary objectives of the study and advocacy of local knowledge and traditional wisdom that is indigenous to the region, whilst maintaining its interdisciplinary nature. The Local Knowledge Secretariat has recently relocated to the School of the Arts this year, and hence today's event is its first collaboration with USM.CREATE. For that, thank you so much. The Local Knowledge Group has benefited from its advisor, Professor Dato Sri Salleh's knowledge, wisdom, and insights born of a lifetime study into and advocacy of Malay local wisdom. It is thus fitting and appropriate that this very distinguished professor and scholar is the honored guest for today's Local Knowledge Talk. So today's Local Knowledge Talk is entitled Contributions of Malay Wisdom to Cultural Developments in China, Madagascar, and France by our notable speaker, a professor of comparative literature from School of Humanities USM, none other than Professor Dato Sri Dr. Salleh Yaapar. And this talk will be moderated by our lovely Dr. Nurul Farhana Abdullah, one of the secretariats of Local Knowledge Group of USM, and also a senior lecturer from School of Humanities USM. Please give them a virtual clap. All right, so let me first introduce a moderator before I pass this baton to her. Nurul Farhana binti Abdullah is a senior lecturer of English literature at the School of Humanities USM. She holds a PhD from the University of Malaya and a Master of Philosophy from the University of Birmingham, UK. Her main research interest is in Shakespeare studies, and she has published several articles and book chapters on Malaysian Shakespeare. She has also published journal articles on drama, as well as studies on post-colonial or diasporic fiction. Nurul has been actively involved in research into the field of local knowledge and has published several edited volumes with USM Press dealing with various aspects of local knowledge in the Malaysian context, covering traditional performance, traditional healing, and local Malay literature. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome our panel and our moderator. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Miss Andy City, for that very informative introduction to the Local Knowledge Group, and also a brief bio. However, it is my pleasure now to read to you all a biodata on our guest of honor, Professor Dato Sri Dr. Salleh Yaapar. Dr. Sri Dr. Salleh Yaapar is Professor of Comparative Literature at University Science Malaysia, Penang, Malaysia. He is also a member of the International Advisory Council, as well as a Distinguished Fellow of the International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, ISTAC, International Islamic University, Malaysia. He is the first recipient of the Malay Language Academic Personality Award ATABM, Ministry of Education, Malaysia. He was formerly chairman of the Board of Governors, Dewan Bahasa dan Pustaka, Malaysia, holder of the European Chair of Malay Studies, Leiden University in the Netherlands. And prior to that, he was Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Development, Deputy Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, and Dean of the School of Humanities, all at University Science Malaysia. In addition, Professor Dato Seri has also been the advisor of USM's Local Knowledge Research Group since its inception in 2010. A bit about his academic background. Professor Mat Salleh obtained his Bachelor of Arts with Honours from University of Malaya, Master of Arts from University of the Philippines in Quezon City, as well as from Temple University, Philadelphia, USA, and his Doctorate of Philosophy with distinction was also obtained from Temple University. His areas of specialization are comparative literature, literary theory, and literature of the Malay world. His significant books include Poetry and Mysticism, a hermeneutical reading of the poems of Amir Hamza, and Pilgrimage to the Orient from 2009. The first book was published in 1995 and reissued in 2015. Professor Mat Salleh has also published in international journals such as Journal of Management, Spirituality and Religion, International Journal of Applied Psychoanalytic Studies, Asian Journal of Social Science, The Muslim World, Indonesia and the Malay World, Kuna PP, Journal of Postcolonial Writing and Culture, International Journal of Cross-Cultural Management, and Indonesian Journal of Islam and Muslim Societies. In terms of editorial services, Prof. Mat Salleh is currently the Editor-in-Chief of Malay Literature and formerly the Editor-in-Chief of Melayu, Journal Antarabangsa Dunia Melayu. At the same time, he sits on the International Advisory Board of Al-Shajarah, a Scopus Index journal, and the editorial board of Kemanusiaan, Asian Journal of Humanities, also Scopus indexed. As a tribute to Prof. Mat Salleh's academic contributions, a book published in 2014 was dedicated to him by his international colleagues titled Rainbows of Malay Literature and Beyond, Festschrift in honor of Professor Mat Salleh Yaapar. With this introduction, it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome Prof. Dato Seri Mat Salleh Yaapar to present his talk titled Contributions of Malay Wisdom to Cultural Developments in China, Madagascar, and France. Prof. Dato Seri.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nurul, Farhana. Hello. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to everyone. I would like to take this opportunity, of course, first of all, to thank Dr. Nurul for the elaborate introduction, Alhamdulillah, as well as to our host, Wan Andi City, as well as Encik J. I would like also to thank the USM.CREATE for inviting me to participate in this program, as well as the USM Local Knowledge Secretariat for still remembering me. Alhamdulillah. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, the title of my lecture or my talk today is From Local to Global, Contributions of Malay Wisdom to Socio-Cultural Development in China, Madagascar, and France. Okay, I'm sharing with you my PowerPoint so that it is easier for me to speak and also easier for you to follow, inshallah. So this is the title page. Alhamdulillah, we will move immediately to the prologue. Okay. Can you hear my voice? Nurul, everyone?
Yes, Dato, see, very clear.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, generally, local wisdom or local knowledge is a comprehensive corpus of knowledge based on collective experiences and observations of specific societies. Its usefulness and validity have been tested from generation to generation. Mostly, local wisdom or local knowledge is upheld by members of each society and is embedded in the people's belief, their rituals, customs, institutions, and thought. Is also commonly expressed in their language, literature, technology, arts, and even daily practices. Thus, local knowledge or local wisdom is conducive and exclusive to the local socio-cultural ecosystem and its natural environment. However, and this is where my stress is, local knowledge or local wisdom is also dynamic in nature, in line with the dynamic development and history of a particular people or community. Certain parts of their local corpus are capable of undergoing transformation. In fact, some are capable of making global trajectories. They have been able to cross local borders and have been accepted or acknowledged by other societies, including those in far away regions. So in this context, the present discourse or talk will highlight some aspects of local wisdom in the Malay archipelago that have made global trajectories and have contributed immensely to the cultural development in China, Madagascar, and France. Although, unfortunately, these are not known to many people. This is the reason why USM-CREATE, as well as the Secretariat, Local Knowledge USM Secretariat, is holding this session and inviting me to try to enlighten our colleagues. Okay, in this context, the present discourse will highlight some aspect of local wisdom in the Malay archipelago. Repeat. This includes expressions of local wisdom in the areas of martial arts and chivalry, shipbuilding, navigation, and maritime trade, as well as in language and literature. In the case of Madagascar and China, to a certain extent, this will not be, but the Chinese case will not be discussed here. Only Madagascar. It even includes social demography. Overall, the global trajectories have enabled elements of or forms of Malay local wisdom to contribute globally in enriching the cultures or civilizations of various peoples in different parts of the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, this discourse will be based on prehistory, historical, sociological, literary, and other related reference materials. Hopefully, the discussion will pave the way for profitable activities in engaging local wisdom or local knowledge in the new millennium. Now, to begin, it is significant to be familiar with essential but lesser known facts regarding the Malays as a large anthropological grouping. People are quite familiar with the Malays in Malaysia, in Indonesia, Sumatra especially, but not the large anthropological grouping, which I will now introduce. So now we are in the second part. The Malays, a huge racial group or anthropological grouping. The Malays are a huge racial group originally based in benua or pentas Sunda. The English term is usually Sundaland. This has been highlighted very recently by Santos and before that by Oppenheimer. Now referred to as the Malay archipelago. However, since the last ice age, they have been globally scattered within what has been referred to as the Malayo-Polynesian world. That is, to the north as far up as Taiwan, to the south till New Zealand, to the east as far as Easter Island, and to the west till Madagascar. So that is the Malayo-Polynesian world. Okay, though scattered in various parts of the world and divided into various ethnic groups, the Malayo-Polynesians generally uphold their shared identity and tradition, especially as users of the Malay language. Now, to make it clear to everyone, here is the Malayo-Polynesian world map. From Taiwan in the north, the New Zealand in the south, from Madagascar in the west to Easter Island in the east, with the Malay archipelago at the center. They were scattered due to the flood, the great flood that I mentioned earlier. And on the next page, I'm introducing to you their faces. Malay racial groups and their Malayo-Polynesian world. On left and right of the map, you can see the faces. Some of them are my own friends, like this brother and his wife from South Africa, Mr. Songkok on the left. The others are not my close friends yet, probably. But if you go to their places, you would come across them. Okay, at the middle is, of course, the so-called Malay archipelago. But as far as if you turn to your left or right, you have Madagascar, in the west, and then you have Easter Islands in the east. Then lowest you have New Zealand, and of course up there is Taiwan. These are all people of the Malay racial stock or racial group, and I took the opportunity also to introduce to you, because I will be speaking a little bit on this afterward, the architecture of their houses. On the left, you have the Malay house. In the middle, you have the marina, or the marina people of Madagascar, and at the end, you have the Hawaiian traditional house. Okay. Now, yes, indeed, originally the Malay racial groups were all based in Benua Sunda or Sundaland, sometimes referred to as Sunda platform. According to Oppenheimer, in his book, Sundaland was once a cradle of civilization, a paradise. He, in fact, used the term a paradise. There is Eden in the east. He was stressing on it. He said, yes, here was Eden in the east. And in line with Oppenheimer, there is this other scholar from South America, that is Santos, in his book Atlantis. He upholds that Sundaland is the location of the lost Atlantis narrated in Plato's Timaeus and Critias. So these are two great scholars. One is very recent. It's going back to only 2005. The other one was about 2-3 years earlier, 1998. Some books also to do away with the old theory saying that the Malays originated from Taiwan. No, the fact is the reverse. The Aboriginal groups in Taiwan, they were all based here, and they were all scattered like the others due to the Great Flood. Okay, now we move on. Still about this big group of Malays, but unfortunately, during the last ice age, about 16,000 years ago, Benua Sunda was submerged, by a catastrophic flood due to the rise in water level. Aside from the Ice Age event, Santos connects the flood and the migration to volcanic eruptions of Krakatoa and Toba in ancient times. Thus, Benua Sunda vanished as the lost Eden, and the people widely scattered throughout the four corners of the world. Specifically, they migrated to Taiwan, now in China, in the north, to New Zealand in the south, to the Pacific Islands and Easter Islands in the east, as well as to Madagascar in the west. Madagascar is just beside Africa. Interestingly, wherever they went, they brought the Malay language along with them. And in those places, they became early settlers or native. Thus, together, they helped form the so-called Malayo-Polynesian world. All right. But the rest remain in the Malay archipelago, including probably my ancestors, yeah, and struggle with the new landscapes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, the discussion now will be focused more on the Malays of the archipelago, although those in relevant parts of the Malayo-Polynesian world will not be forgotten. Okay, now we come to the Malays of the Malay archipelago. And the contribution, local wisdom contributions that I will be speaking about is based here. Historically, the Malays within the archipelago were already known worldwide since the time of Ptolemy, yeah, in the 2nd century. They were already known to the whole world in the 2nd century. In his book, Geography, the Greco-Egyptian scholar referred to them as Malayo Kolum. Interestingly, the same name, yeah, Kunlun, is also found in a Chinese history text written by one Zhen, a Chinese historian of the 3rd century. So if Ptolemy came from the 2nd century, now you have a support coming from a Chinese historian from the 3rd century. This is described by my own professor, former professor, Wong Dan Wu, in his book 1968. The Malays then, according to both sources, were especially known for their navigation skills, maritime trade, and other economic activities. They cannot be cheating because these were written in very highly researched books. Okay, since 500 Common Era, year of the Common Era, there were export-oriented iron smelting activities in the Malay Peninsula, specifically in Kedah Tua, ancient Kedah. Yeah? And we have a very able center working on Kedah Tua here in USM. And by the 7th century, there was a kingdom known by the name of Melayu near Jambi in Sumatra. It was later incorporated into a bigger kingdom called Sriwijaya, based at nearby Palembang. Though based in Sumatra, the empire had tremendous influence throughout the archipelago. All right. Sriwijaya remained in power until the 13th century. The empire had a lasting unifying effect on the Malay archipelago. Thus, numerous groups in the region recognized their shared heritage and common identity and referred to themselves as Melayu Malays, with their homelands called Tanah Melayu, Malay lands. This includes Jambi, Palembang, Minangkabau, Sia, and then you go down the lines there until you come across Engkau suka Kedah, Kelantan, Pahang, etc., etc., in the Malay Peninsula. This could be found in the book written by my friend Andaya, Filipino actually, who also taught me at University of Malaya. Okay, and here is a map of Sriwijaya. Okay. Sriwijaya is based in Palembang, but controls not only the Malacca Straits of Malacca, but also the seas surrounding the peninsula as well as the bigger islands there, Sumatra and Java. Sriwijaya had a long history of mercantile and religious ties with China, India, as well as the Middle East. Now we are coming closer to the contribution. In 670 of the Common Era, a Tang dynasty monk, Yi Sing, stopped by Sriwijaya and Kita, you say, that means Kedah, on his way to Nalanda, India to study Buddhism. He didn't go straight, he stopped here. In Sriwijaya, he studied Sanskrit as well as Malay language, which at that time was using Pallava school, for 6 months before proceeding to India on a large ship belonging to the Raja of, or Emperor of Sriwijaya. Interestingly, later, Yi Sing returned to the Malay land and stayed again from 689 to 695, studying and translating books like most of us are doing now, translating books, writing books. But in his case on Buddhism, under the supervision of a Srivijayan high monk, a native or Malay high monk by the name of Sakya Kirti. I have not met him, but I have come across his picture, so I put his picture there, as probably envisioned by some of his followers. He was, or he is, the author of Hasta Tanda, a book on religious law, Buddhist religious law. That is the photo of, imagine the photo of Sakya Kirti. He was a guru to Yi Sing. Never heard of a Malay becoming a Buddhist guru to a Chinese in the 8th century. Now, due to Srivijaya's distinguished status as a thriving business center and a center for the study of Buddhism and Sanskrit, Yi Sing suggested that Chinese students of Buddhism should study first in Sriwijaya before proceeding to India. If they ever had the idea of going to India, he said, no, go first to this Malay land, Sriwijaya. And this was recorded by Yi Sing in a record of the Buddhist religion as practiced in India and then made available. And was also repeated in another treatise. Okay, published in 2006. Like Ptolemy and Wanzheng. Wanzheng, remember, is the 3rd century Chinese historian. Yi Sing, in the 8th century, referred to the Malays as Kunlun. I would like all my friends colleagues to remember this term carefully, Kunlun, referring to the Malays, because we'll be talking a lot about them after. Regarding their appearance, he noted that Kunlun people have curly hair, dark bodies, bare feet, and they wear sarongs. I'm not sure whether the word sarong came from him or from people who edited his work later on. Yeah? And very much like Yi Sing, generally the Chinese were also familiar with Malay navigational skills as well as with their language. And with regard to the language, they referred to it as Kunlun Yu. So the Malays were referred to as Kunlun, their language Kunlun Yu. We'll be coming more and more to terms, across more and more terms about the Kun. Now, as time moved on, Srivijaya started to decline in the 13th century and ceased to exist in the 14th century. Fortunately, it was soon replaced by Malacca, based in the Malay Peninsula. Malacca's entrepot was for a long time a thriving trading center, a meeting point between merchants from the east and the west. Meanwhile, slightly earlier, Islam came to the archipelago, which the process of Islamization started in the early 12th century, but during the Sultanate of Malacca in the 15th century. It was during this period that the Malay language, which is Jawi or Arabic script, rapidly developed. I mention this because it has to do with the last part of my presentation after all. Unfortunately, in 1511, Malacca was captured and colonized by the Portuguese. Soon other Western powers came, including Holland or Netherlands, Spain, suit in colonizing and plundering the Malay archipelago until the middle of the 20th century. All right, I have given enough time to introduce to you the Malays, both as a large anthropological group as well as those based in the center, that is the Malay archipelago. Now, we are moving on to Malay wisdom and its contribution in China, in Madagascar, as well as in France. We begin now with Malay wisdom in China. Contributions of Malay wisdom to cultural development or socio-cultural developments in China may be seen in three aspects, different but related aspects, namely shipbuilding and navigation, martial arts, the RTS, and chivalry, and finally, language. We begin with shipbuilding and navigation. The Malays were known for their wisdom at sea. Among the earliest to acknowledge this were the Chinese themselves. According to a 3rd century Chinese historian mentioned earlier, that is Wang Zhen, the Kunlun or Malays were great shipbuilders. They were also sailors and traders. They were shipbuilders, sailors, as well as traders. We are talking about maritime trade, of course. They built and sailed large vessels, generally known as Kunlun Bo. Earlier on, we have the language. Now you have the ship, Kunlun Bo, meaning huge Malay ship. And especially Jong, J-O-N-G, and Gali. She didn't mention Gali, but the word Jong was there. Measuring 200 feet long, generally measuring about 200 feet long, 20 feet high above water, with 4 sails, cargo of 900 tons, and 600 to 700 people within one Jong or within one ship. Again found in Wang Gangwu by page 60. Now, a typical Kunlun Bo of the 3rd century was probably similar in look and size as the one shown below. I have tried to look for the 3rd century picture. I couldn't find, but this is the nearest. Okay, this is a possible image of Kunlun Bo, Malay ship, as known in the 3rd century China. Huge ship. You can see there, the ship has 4 sails. And as described earlier, typical Kunlun Bo would measure about 200 feet long, 20 feet high above water, 4 sails, cargo of 900 tons, and people between 6 to 700 to men the ship, as well as to be there as passengers. Okay, moving on from the picture, there is another possibility. That is probably a typical Kunlun boat was also similar to the Mendam Brahi, the big and famous ocean-going vessels of Sultan Mahmud Shah of Malacca, which, according to Hikat Tua, was always used by Hang Tuah. Mendam Brahi was not a jom, it was a galley, but of similar size, more or less. Yeah, was 360 feet long, with 3 sails, 100 pedals, which each pedal manned by 2 people. That would mean you need about 200 people to make use of the pedals. Capable of carrying 400 people, and a cargo of about 600 tons. So more or less similar to the picture that I have shown earlier. The difference is this one, the Mendam Brahi, has or had only 4 sails. Yeah. Okay, Mendam Brahi, I managed to get a picture of a ship which is always referred to as something similar or possible image of Mendam Brahi. Mendam Brahi in Malay would be, in English would be suppressed desire. There's a very interesting story. When they were building this ship, the ship was built in order for them to take Sultan to Java, yeah, to get engaged with the Javanese princess. And when they were building the ship, the Bendahara asked Hang Tuah what should be the name of the ship. Hang Tuah smiled and replied, well, it should be Mendam Brahi, because the suppressed desire will now be probably unlocked. Once this ship is ready, we can take the Sultan, go and get the hands of this princess from Java. Suppressed desire will be over. Okay. Indeed, the Malays were among the first people to be involved in giant-sized shipbuilding, whether it be galley or jong. Now, according to Linda Noreen Sheffer, 1996, page 12, at least by the 3rd century, again going back to the 3rd century, the Chinese have witnessed Malay sailors and traders approaching their shores in huge ocean-going vessels. And they were coming from the so-called Kunlun Islands in the southern seas. And the Chinese were also aware of the fact that the islanders were exceptional navigators. As sailors, they were not technically equipped with compasses. Sheffer acknowledged this. They were not equipped with compasses, maps, or charts. Rather, they sailed and journeyed across oceans only with the wisdom of celestial, so-called celestial navigation. Amazing. Indeed, they were guided only by the wave, winds, clouds, birds, stars, etc., which form a part of the local wisdom. Again, I have to depend on Sheffer. As Sheffer put it, and he was quoting from Taylor, and I quote, the Malay sailors were highly skilled navigators, sailing over the oceans for thousands of miles without a compass or written charts, like what is normally used by sailors today. They navigated by the winds and stars, by the shape and color of the clouds, by the color of the water, the sea water, and by swell and wave patterns on the ocean surfaces. But amazingly, they could locate an island when they were still like 30 miles from its shores. By analyzing the behavior of various birds, animals, and plants life in the water, and the patterns of swells and waves over the surface of the sea. Schaeffer, 1996. Of course, he was also referring to Taylor in making this quotation. But I believe what is stated here is true. Now we move on. The navigation skills of the Malays did not go unnoticed. They managed to attract the attention of those who were in touch with them, especially the Chinese. Thus, Schaeffer again clearly records that the Chinese learned a lot from the Malay art of shipbuilding and sailing technology. And he says, I'm quoting him again, the Chinese also knew these islanders as builders and as the crews of ocean-going vessels engaged in long-distance overseas trades. The Chinese, in fact, appear to have learned much from these sailors. The Malays, according to him, independently invented a sail made from woven mats reinforced with bamboo, at least several hundred years BCE, and by the time of the Han Dynasty, we're talking about the 3rd century, the Chinese were using such sails, which they have learned from the Malays. So friends and colleagues, this is a very clear example of the global trajectory of Malay local wisdom. It is in the form of shipbuilding and sailing technology, which was well accepted by the Chinese. Of course, people today do not know about this. The Malays do not know, the Chinese today do not know. Okay, we go on. A typical example is the Malay Jong. I already mentioned the Jong just now. Malay Jong technology, adapted by the Chinese for centuries, alongside with its name, Jong. The name is Jong. The name is specifically Javanese, actually, from Java. But when the Chinese adopted the Jong technology, they also adopted the term. And the term in Chinese adaptation becomes Jun. Until today, the name Jun or Jang carries similar meanings with the original Malay Jong. And if you go to internet, you'll come across a lot of pictures like this, telling you about the Malay Jong and the Chinese Jun. Okay, friends and colleagues, Malay shipbuilding and navigation wisdom, as well as expertise, was still there at the time when Malacca was attacked by the Portuguese in 1511. At that time, according to Portuguese sources, which I will mention down below, generally, Malacca's galley and jongs was also still bigger than their contemporary Chinese ships. Thus, according to the Portuguese chronicler Tom Pires, in his Summa Orientals of 1515, in Canton, China, the jongs of Malacca were usually asked to anchor far away from the harbor. If the captain tried to go closer to the harbor, he or she will be chased away. Why? The reason is easy. This is because their big size was considered dangerous to Chinese ships, which were mostly smaller at that time. So if they were only about 20 to 50 Chinese ships here around the harbor, no Malay jong or Malay galleys will be allowed to come close to the harbor. They have to be anchored far away. This was a fact that, and there was a time when Malacca already went down. Sriwijaya already lost in memory. Now, in fact, according to European chroniclers, Malaccas and Javanese jongs were also bigger compared to the Portuguese galleons when the Portuguese came, as may be seen below. Thus, when he was in the midst of attacking Malacca, Alfonso de Albuquerque was attacking Malacca, for example, was shocked to see, first he heard, then he saw, especially when he saw the jongs from Java. He was shocked to see them and referred to them as Espanto del Mundo, world shakers or world terrors, capable of terrorizing Western and especially in his case Portuguese ship. Okay, I managed to get this picture from the internet. So on the left you can see Malacca's jong. On the right you can see Portuguese galleon. All right, thank you so much. Now we'll move on to martial arts. We're still talking about Malay wisdom and its contribution to Chinese socio-cultural development. Now we're going to the martial arts and chivalry. During the Tang Dynasty, numerous Kunluns or Malays traveled back and forth to China. Another fact that is not known to most Malays now, even to most Chinese now. Many resided there, especially in Guangdong. Now, these Malays included those who became bodyguards to palace officials, and they were referred to as Kunlun No, meaning Malay slave or Malay servant. Just now you have Kunlun Po, which is Malay ship. Earlier on you have also Kunlun, which was Malay language. Now you have Kunlun No, which refers to the Malays themselves, who were in China at that time, and they were, if they were there not as sellers and as merchants, they were slaves at that time. Okay, but these are elite slaves or elite servants actually, because they were working with the palace officials. Their chivalry, prowess, and magical abilities impressed the Chinese social elite so much, to the extent that from time to time they became the source of inspirations to authors of the wuxia or chivalric romance genre. I like to teach this in my class. Wuxia. I don't read Chinese, but I read the translation, of course. In fact, the figures of the Kunlun No, the Kunlun slave, also became popular motif for amulets used to accompany Chinese kings and queens and other nobilities in their royal tombs. Well, they were not only bodyguards for those who are still alive and teaching, but they are also bodyguards accompanying the royalties who already passed away and residing in their tombs. There are a lot of examples of these figures. This is one. This is a Malay guy, who has been placed in one of the royal tombs, and he is there heading the either the king or the queen or other royal families who have passed away. They became inspirations. They gave inspiration, sources of inspiration to writers as well as to people in the art world. It turned them into figures like this and then sold them to Chinese kings and queens and royal families to accompany them when they are dead. Okay. Based on that kind of introduction, I'm now taking you to literature specifically. In literature, an interesting example is the famous story of the Kunlun No. The title means Malay slave. Written by Zing in the 9th century, which portrays a Malay servant or slave and martial arts expert. Mr. Servant is also a martial arts expert named Mole, M-O-L-E, Mole. According to the 9th century story, Mole is a servant of Master Tui. He is, according to the story, he is invulnerable, capable of flying, and has other supernatural powers. These skills and chivalry enable him to help Master Tui in securing the latter's sweetheart, Hong Zhou, from a minister's residence. He had a sweetheart at that time, but somehow this minister was more powerful than this guy, so the minister was able to divert his sweetheart to him, and she was always there with him in his residence. So what Mr. Tui did was to get the help of Mole, and Mole used all his supernatural abilities in order to secure. And they finally managed to secure the sweetheart. I have managed to find this illustration from the internet. Illustration is showing Mole flying actually from roof to roof with his Master Tui and the Master's sweetheart, that is Hong Zhou, on his back. So first he has Tui on his back, and then Tui had his sweetheart on his own back. And by doing that, he managed to have his Master Tui, to secure the sweetheart from the minister. Now, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, much later, 300 years later, based on Mole's chivalric adventures, a Ming Dynasty playwright, Mei Dingzhu, who lived from 1549 to 1615, wrote a play titled How the Kunlun Slave Became Immortal. Very interesting. How I wish this play is staged today. So, interest in Malay chivalry remained intact from time to time. From as far as the 3rd century, and then 8th century, and then now even the 16th century. Thus, chivalric Malay figures had for ages been the inspirations not only for the development of Wuxia literary genre, but also for martial arts such as the Wudong Kung Fu, as well as the Chinese operas and movies, mostly with heroes capable of flying. I hope one of these days some scholars we go intensely into this and try to see the origins of Wudang Kung Fu. I have a strong belief that it is connected to this story. The story about this Malay guy by the name of Malay. Okay. In fact, and this is very interesting. In the present millennium, within our own century now, the magnificent Kunlun character, Malay character, is still revered by the Chinese. In China, our friends here are not aware of this. One typical example may be seen in a movie, UG. English translation is The Promise, produced in 2005. And the movie was adapted, actually, it was an adaptation from the Kunlun No by Ping Xing of the 9th century. The movie features the protagonist Kunlun. The name is now changed from Malay to Kunlun. I'm not sure whether the producers were aware of the fact that Kunlun is Malay or not. Yeah? Probably they are quite aware. That's the reason why when they chose the main hero, the main character, they chose someone from Korea who has appearance more or less like a Malay. It features the protagonist Kunlun fighting and flying here and there like Lipo, a Malay, yeah, saving the life of his master. This time the master's name is Guangming, and the latter's sweetheart by the name of Ding Ching. So now I managed to secure for you to see this very dramatic story of Kunlun flying here and there at the top. This guy looks, his face looks very much like a Malay. And he was helping his master, Yang Ming, on the left here. And finally, he's saving Guanqing. But Guanqing finally falls in love with him. Very interesting story. This is a Chinese story about a Malay servant trying to help his master, Wen Meng, and also to save the master's sweetheart. But at the end of the day, the master's sweetheart falls in love with him. Now with that, ladies and gentlemen, we move from martial arts and chivalry to language. And we discuss how Malay wisdom, again, is brought to China in terms of language. Okay, another aspect of the contribution of Malay wisdom to the Chinese is language. Apparently, the contribution took place in stages. The last stage was after the fall of Malacca to the Portuguese in 1511. According to Philippe F.R. Thomas, since its encounter with Malacca, the Portuguese adopted about 200 Malay terms and words from various areas of life. They came, they bombarded Malacca, managed to get hold of Malacca, and they also took about 200 Malay terms and words from various areas of life, including governance, navigation, trade, flora, and fauna. This is to be found in Thomas 1988. These terms and words include Mandarin, M-A-N-D-A-R-I-N, which in Malay is menteri or mantri. Zabanda, coming from the Malaysia Banda. Bendara, coming from the Malay Bendahara. Tumungau, Temenggung, and Mangkubumi. Some of these terms were brought to Macau when they moved from from Malacca. They also managed to grab Macau from China. They brought some of these terms to Macau. In Macau, and later the whole of China, the Malay term mantri or mantari, minister, was accepted by the Chinese through the Portuguese version. The Portuguese version was Mandarin. But the Chinese adopted the term with a little change, and it became Mandarin, and used it to refer to government officials, and especially to the elitist official language used by them, as opposed to languages used by the commoners. So the term or name Mandarin, as a reference to the elitist official national language, remains in China till today. It has its origins in the Malay word menteri, which the Portuguese managed to get both from Malacca. Actually, according to Claudine Salmon, in an article titled Malay and Javanese Loanwords in Chinese, published in 2009, according to him, long before Mandarin, before the word Mandarin, many other Malay terms or words have been adopted by the Chinese from time to time. One of the terms or words, and the earliest, according to him, to contribute to the development of Chinese language is Pinang, the Malay word Pinang, meaning Arakanat, commonly referred to as betel nut, which the Chinese adopted as Binglang. So from Penang becomes Binglang. I have also included the Chinese character there, Binglang. The Malay name of the plant, Pinang, was first actually mentioned in records of strange and rare objects written during the Eastern Han Dynasty in the 2nd, 3rd century. So not only with the fall of Malacca, it's already there much earlier. It was adopted into Chinese during the Nangqi dynasty, 479 to 501 of the Common Era, that is in the 5th century. During that time, according to Salman, lots of Arakanat trees, pokok pinang, are exported to China from the Malay archipelago. And also not to forget from Cambodia. This was also a Malay land. And lots of them were planted in Guangdong, Yunnan, and Fujian. Later, Bingling eating or chewing habit has developed into a culture of its own. Thus today in China, there is the Binglang Zishi, referring to a young woman selling betel nuts and cigarettes. This is the latest development in the Chinese culture, which has to do with pokok pinang, Binglang. Ladies and gentlemen, aside from Binglang, there are many other Malay names of trees, fruits, which were also adopted by the Chinese, including Mangqishi, mangosteen. According to the 15th century Chinese record, Yang Ya Xinglan, it was derived from the Malay name Manggis. Now, not only Manggis, but beside Mangqishi, there is also Liulian, a name adopted from durian, the Malay term for a big, thorny, smelly to some people, but very delicious fruit. The fruit is now very popular in China. Now, other than Lilian, there is also Langsa, adopted from the Malay name Langsat. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here are the fruits and the adapted names. From Malay Pinang became Chinese Binglang. From Manggis, Malay Manggis became the Chinese Mang Chi She. Yeah. And the next one, Durian, Yulian, and the last one, Langsat to Langsa. Okay. There are many other fruits, yeah, but leave it at that. Now we move on to another part. Aside from plural names, as discussed in the above section, the Malay shipping term or name, Jong, meaning last ship or vessels, has also been adopted in China for centuries. Its Chinese adopted name, Jun, the Chang, carries similar meanings until today, referring to last ship. All right, we have dealt enough with the contributions of Malay wisdom in China in the three aspects. Now we move on to Madagascar. So section 5, Malay wisdom in Madagascar. As indicated earlier, the Malays were a maritime people. In fact, for that reason, when you speak Malay and talk to them about their country, they would refer to it as tanah air, not only tanah, but also air. You know? They will never forget air. Okay, as indicated earlier, the Malays were a maritime people. From time immemorial, many of them have traveled to faraway places across the Pacific and the Indian Oceans. Obviously, the first event was the flood, the Great Flood. They had to flee. What more with the events in Sumatra, that is the volcanic eruptions. So they went to faraway places across both oceans, Pacific as well as India. One of the places that they went to was Madagascar, very far away. This involved wave of maritime migration. Migration after migration after migration. But one of these is very, very special. The special one took place in 815 of the Common Era, and it was pioneered by 30 Ma'anyan ladies. So Dr. Nurul should be very happy to hear this. Ladies pioneering maritime migration. And this took place around 815 CE from Sri Vijaya. That was the time, Dr. Nurul, the time of Sri Vijaya.
Okay, interesting.
Time of Sri Vijaya. And they started from where? They started from the present region of Lembah Barito, Kalimantan, Borneo. Lembah Barito, Kalimantan in Borneo. Kalimantan now happens to be part of Indonesia. That time there was no such thing as Indonesia. That time was only the Malay land. Okay, this could be found in Wales, 2012, but 2 years earlier in Murray et al. In 2010. They discussed very clearly about the 30 pioneering Ma'anyan ladies. Don't ask me whether they went by themselves or they were accompanied by their men or not. I'm sure the men were there, but something happened probably. The men perished. Imagine they crossed perilous ocean to Madagascar island beside the African continent, and they were using only outrigger ships. Images of Malay outrigger ships are plentiful in the internet, and that is one of them. Up there. Okay, so we're now going a little bit further into Madagascar. In Madagascar, the Borneo settlers became ancestors to the present Marinas. The present people of Madagascar are referred to as the Marinas. And I have an image, a typical image of a marina here. And when they were there, and when they went there, they took along with them, of course, their language, which is Ma'anyan, or which was Ma'anyan. Here, Ma'anyan, the Malay Polynesian language, which they brought from Borneo, developed into what is now called Malagasy, or Marina language. Again, Dato talks a lot about this in his book 1991. Now, ladies and gentlemen, aside from language, in Madagascar, the settlers' succeeding generations retain up to now most of the cultural wisdom and tradition, including in shipbuilding, especially rigger, and navigation, architecture, especially their house building, costumes, as well as ceremonies. So on the screen, you can see two pictures there. One is there are two ladies there. Number two is the house, typical house of the Marina people. Okay. On the next slide is a list of Marina Malagasy words with their Ma'anyan and Malay cognates. They have not forgotten it. They brought it along with them, and it is there until now. Number one is a word known to them as tadi. In Marina is tadi, T-A-D-Y. In Malay is tali. In English, of course, it is string. And you can go down until number 12. Midi, membeli, buying. Dimi, lima. Tadini, silu, teling. Roa, roe, dua. Rano, rano, air or water. Follow, 10, 10. Okay. Afu, api, fire, and so on and so forth. There are many sources, but I'm quoting from this Facebook, Anak Borneo Facebook. Okay, finally, still with regard to Madagascar, here is the Marina of Madagascar with their Ma'anyan cousins of Borneo in similar ceremonial costumes, more or less similar ceremonial costumes. Again, I managed to get it from Anak Borneo, the Facebook. With that, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, now finally we fly to France and see what contribution Malay wisdom gives to France. This final section will concentrate on Malay wisdom in France, especially regarding the Malay pantun and its adaptation in France as well as Europe, since the 19th century. I should also add actually America. Now we rehearse a little bit about pantun. Pantun is a brilliant oral poetic form of anonymous authorship. It is a product of Malay traditional wisdom. Basically, it is a quatrain in which first and third and second and fourth lines rhyme with musical quality. Indeed, it is a form of minimal art, a world of experience compressed into a very small space. There is about 32 to 48 syllables in 16 to 20 words within 4 lines. And I'm talking about the basic pantun, the 4-line pantun. Here is a typical example of an excellent pantun. Jikalau tidak kerana bintang, masakan bulan terbit tinggi. Dr. Nurul should be reading this. Jikalau tidak kerana abang, masakan saya datang kembali. The English translation would be, if there were no stars in view, would the moon rise up on high? Were it not because of you, should I ever venture? Ladies and gentlemen, the first couplet is the pembaya, shadow, for shadow. The second is the maksud, that is the meaning. The former is made up of natural imagery. The latter pertains to human thought, emotions, or feeling. The two couplets are connected either by way of sound or in terms of meaning. The foreshadower leads the audience to its meaning, to the meaning. There is a smooth flow here from nature to man. Thus, in pantun, man is closely related to nature. There is no other literary expression of this nature, actually. This is a paramount example of Malay wisdom. Basically, the pantun reflects traditional Malay life, as well as their worldview and wisdom. Specifically, man should exist in harmony or in unity with nature. That is their basic wisdom. But at the same time, I must also emphasize the fact that pantun is versatile. It has many forms other than the basic 4 lines. The above 4-line pantun is the basic or dominant form. Others include the 2-line pantun, 6-line pantun, and the pantun berkait, which is ling pantun. It is the ling pantun that will take us to France, actually. In the ling pantun, the quatrains are linked by way of repetition. Line 1 and line 4 in the first quatrain becomes line 1 and line 3 in the second quatrain, and so on, so forth. Pantuns, especially the ling type, has fascinated and attracted Europeans since the 18th century. This is again something that many people are not aware of. But it's a fact that since 18th century, pantun has been able to facilitate and attract European, not just any European, but the authors, great writers from Europe, and also from America. And especially, as we will discuss afterward, from France. The history is as follows. Very short history here. There is in 1783, the term pantun was mentioned in William Marsden's History of Sumatra. He just mentioned it, but just like that, in passing. Then he came back to pantun in 1812 by picking up a link pantun in Jawi, yeah, and have it included in his book, which is actually a dictionary and grammar of the Malayan language. Yeah. Published in London in 1812. This is something very, very historical in terms of development of pantun. And we thank William Marsden for doing this. He had it in his dictionary. Now, the pantun begins with kupu-kupu terbang melintang. The whole pantun is like this. Kupu-kupu terbang melintang, terbang di laut di hujung karang. Hati di dalam menaruh bimbang dari dahulu sampai sekarang. And what is interesting about what he has done is that he started it with the Jawi version. But there is a Jawi version in his dictionary and grammar book. To go on with the second part of the pantun, terbang di laut di ujung karang, burung nasar terbang ke bandar. Dari dahulu sampai sekarang, banyak muda sudah kupandang. The last verse is burung nasar terbang ke bendang, bulunya lagi jatuh ke petani, banyak muda sudah kupandang, saya sama muda. So there's the last one here. Bulunya jatuh ke petani, 20 anak merpati. Tidak sama mudaku ini, sungguh pandai membujuk. So as I mentioned earlier, there was a Rumi. He first put in the Jawi, and the Jawi is here on my slide. And he gave a Rumi version of this pantun, as well as an English translation. And it is the English translation which will be the focus of attention in Europe soon after. Now, since the time he had it published, the pantun has been able to attract a lot of writers. And specifically, in 1829, the kupu-kupu pantun was included in Victor Hugo's famous romantic collection, Les Orientales. He didn't translate it, he just put it in his collection. It was translated into French by Ernest Fournet, and Fournet got it from Marsden's book, based on Marsden's translation or English rendering. So here is our friend who has done a lot of service to Malay culture, specifically to Malay literature, and more specifically to Malay pantun. Yes, Victor Hugo. And he had it published in his collection, Les Orientales, on the right. Okay. Now, since then, sorry. Since then, many great French poets started to write poems based on the Malay pantun berkait found in Hugo's collection. In fact, it became the model for the pantoum genre, Pantoum, pantoum. They borrowed it from pantone, but they retained the construction more or less as pantoum. So it became a pantoum genre which emerged in the early 19th century and maintained in French literary tradition, along with its Malay name till today. Some examples of famous pantoums are, very quickly, Les Papillons pantoum. Papillon actually refers to the kupu-kupu, butterflies. This was published in 1838 by Theophile Gautier, and very soon followed by Monsoleil d'Automne. They always write pantoum at the back, just in case people do not know what this is all about. What form is this? Monsoleil d'Automne, referring to the autumn weather. Was published in 1856 by Theodore de Banville, and then a very, very famous pantoum by the title of Harmonie du Joie, found in a very famous collection, Le Fleur du Mal, 1857 by Charles Woodley. This was followed by pantoum, title simply written there as pantoum, 1860 by Albert Platini. And then another poem called Pantoum, 1865 by Louisa Penn Schaeffer. Followed by Pantoum Malays, obviously meaning Malay Pantun, 1884 by Leconte de Lisle. And then also another one, Pantoum Negligent Pantoums, actually, by Paul Verlaine. And finally, at least in my list here, Le Pantoum des Pantouns, Pantun of all Pantums, by René Gill. Second year of the 20th century. Okay. So I mentioned a lot of pantums there, examples. But one of the best pantums, the real masterpiece, is Harmonie du Soir, which in English means evening harmony, and I have made my own translation. It's Malay Keharmonian Petang by Charles Woodley in his famous collection Le Fleur du Mal, Flowers of Evil. Okay. Evening harmony, Keharmonian Petang. Now, since we are talking about French literature, I have copy-pasted here the whole text of the Harmonie du Soir, evening harmony. Full text here, and followed by an English translation. I will read to you quickly the English translation. Now every flower sings a censer chain, and every flower gives incense to the night. Sounds, perfume circles in the evening light, turning in languorous walks again and again. And every flower gives incense to the night. The violin trembles like a soul in pain. Round goes the languorous walks again, again. The sky is like an altar, vast and bright. It's about a scenario in the evening. Very humorous, harmonious scenario in the evening. But the poem also has some spiritual message, religious message. Go on. The violin trembles like a soul in pain, a sorrowing soul that fears the unknown night. The sky is like an altar, vast and bright. In its own darkening blood, the sun lies slain. Going so years the unknown, from the shining past, what dreams remain? Though in its own darkening blood the sun lies slain, your memory, like a monstrance, bring me light. It's quite romantic in nature, but we are not very certain when he mentions your memory, whether he is talking about his partner or he is referring to the Lord, your memory, but cannot be the Lord because like a monstrance. Monstrance is a symbol of Jesus, brings me light. Maybe it's really a memory of the partner. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, aside from France, Pantone's influence was also felt in Great Britain and the North American region. Here are some examples. In English literature, you have Henry Austin Dobson with his work In Town, 1876, and followed by, later on, James Matthews and Rhodes. And also in American scenario, you have Donald Justice with his piece entitled The Pantun of the Great Depression. These are all in pantun form. All in all, it goes on to say that pantun has gained entry into various encyclopedias, poetic dictionaries, poetry anthologies, and even guidebooks. It has even been set to classical music, for example, by Claude Debussy, 1880. Sibyl's Ravel in the early years of the 20th century. Impact of pantun is still there. Yeah? You can see today that there are many contemporary pantun writers throughout the world. For example, Mickey Pennington, with his work Strings of History, and Dean P. Goodwin with his work The War. Also, there are numerous websites with sections on. So it is not only France of French, the French people who have benefited from the pantun, but also generally Europe and even America. So we have and actually just summarized in the epilogue. Ladies and gentlemen, the above discourse has highlighted some aspects of local wisdom of the Malays in the Malay archipelago that have made global trajectories and have contributed immensely to the socio-cultural developments in China, Madagascar, and France, including other parts of Europe and even America. The contributions include expressions of Malay wisdom in the areas of martial arts and chivalry, shipbuilding and navigation, as well as language and literature. The fruits of this contribution remain in those countries until today, and they have never denied. As you have seen that in the case of Pantun, the name Pantun is retained. It's only some minor alteration made because of the linguistic issues. So they're still there until today. Unfortunately, as I expressed earlier, Many people, including in the Malay archipelago itself, are ignorant about this. There are a lot of in fact, some of our political leaders also used to be ignoramus with regard to this. Thus, oftentimes, the Malays have been underrated. They have been labeled as lazy, yeah? Not underdeveloped, not capable of doing things which would bring their names and the names of the region in the forefront. The above discourse has also shown that generally local wisdom is dynamic in nature. Certain parts of the corpus are capable of undergoing some, like the martial arts, shipmaking and navigation, language and literature, are capable of making global trajectory. As such, actions should be taken to enable significant aspects of local wisdom to perform their functions globally. The reason why when I first get myself involved in the activities of local wisdom, I've been telling my friends not to only do research with regard to what has been achieved, but also try to project how this local wisdom could be made global. Thus, in keeping with the changing times, I would like to repeat again what I have been saying many, many times. Including within this new millennium, local wisdom should be duly engaged. And hopefully, some of its aspects might be able to make global trajectory again and contribute to humankind internationally. What has been achieved so far is tremendous, actually. And we should thank to the ancestors of the Malays here who have performed their duties in making their local heritage as something global. With that, thank you very much, Dr. Nurul, as the moderator, and thank you very much, friends and colleagues, for listening, hopefully intently to this discourse. Now it's time for us to probably share our views. Now back to you, Dr. Nurul. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Dato Seri, for that very wide-ranging and thought-provoking and okay, Prof.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. While you were away, I was looking through the questions on Facebook, and there are many questions, Prof. So I hope
my God, you should be able to answer some of them.
Oh no, they want your answer, not my answer. I'm nobody. Okay, with question from Prof. Supian Hussein, our friend from KL.
Okay.
He's watching, yeah. Is it true that the term South China Sea was coined later in history, but the original name for South China Sea is Malay? will we ever change the name back to Malaysia?
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Sophian. How are you? Alhamdulillah. I can see his face here. It's okay.
You have to see in Facebook.
Yes, yes. Okay, Prof. The answer is yes. Yeah, from sources that I know, the answer is yes. But we do not know for sure who changed it to South China Sea. Yeah, must have taken place during the time of colonization, I suppose. And it's time for us to struggle and fight back and try to get the name reinstated. That will go very much in line with what we are doing here, trying to get the name Georgetown deleted and bring back the original name, which is Tanjung Penaga. Prof. Sophian, I know you are also helping us in the case of Tanjung Penaga, so we can do this together, inshallah. But I do not know for sure when was it erased. Yeah. Okay. I hope that answers the question to a certain extent. Dr. Nurul.
Thank you, Prof. Dato. I think that is it's actually a very important question about South China Sea. Books at the moment where China is taking claims everywhere.
Correct.
So I don't know how we can counter.
Will be a very difficult struggle, of course. Yeah. Coming up with the two routes. Yeah. Remember. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
So
Next question.
Next question. In relation to the idea of how the Orientalists came, and of course they changed everything. I received this question on the ship making. Okay, Prof.
Come again for whom?
On ship making.
Okay. Ship making.
Yeah. So it's actually from a journal article from 1902. Where the writer was writing based on information from William Walter Skeat, who wrote Malay Magic. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So this is what Smith, his name is Warrington Smith, he says, European writers have credited the Malays with building boats, the lines of which are unsurpassed by European types. Yet, so far as the writer has been able to, no specimen answering to such a description is to be met with in the peninsula. So this is what they say. They are disparaging our Malay craftsmen. Okay, so how do we, of course, now we are 1 century later. How do we as researchers counter this type of colonial criticism that negates Malay wisdom and skill?
Yeah, the colonial criticism should be well counted by way of having this kind of discussion from time to time. And at the same time, we should also be helping the authorities, to enable the society to make a comeback, actually, in terms of shipbuilding. Remember, within our lifetime, when we were still younger, much younger, there were places in Terengganu.
Yes.
I've been to that place, and managed to see at least the remnants of what was taking place at that time. They were still building ships.
Yes.
And orders have been placed to them, actually from the West, to come up with this kind of ship, that kind of ship, But soon after that, and I have been informed that they are not very much active nowadays. So that was the last bastion, yeah, in terms of ship making, yeah, in or within the peninsula. But now I think they're still groping in the dark what to do, how to do, yeah, financial situation, this and that.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
There is one surviving master ship maker still in Terengganu, and he is giving up already because he's not receiving any support, and
Yeah, I
it's
think I
in a
met.
very bad
I think I
situation.
met him when I went there. Must be about 10 years ago. You know, what a pity actually.
Yes.
First of all, it's only in Terengganu during our time that we have it, and not in Kelantan, not in Kedah, not in Penang. You know,
Yes.
in Terengganu at least we have one, but that one is also receding. In Java, I have not been there, so I'm not aware of the places that are still very much engaged in shipbuilding.
Right.
But if we keep on having discussions like this, at least, yeah, at least we are making ways for the
Yeah.
future talents as well as future researchers to come up probably with new ideas of how to revive this.
Yes.
Definitely, this is a heritage that is very much treasured. The Westerners have been saying about it, that you guys were there at the forefront of everything. The Chinese were looking at them in awe, you know. We're talking about 6th century, 7th century in China. Yeah, and then during the time of Malacca, when Malacca fell, people still saw the fact that the Chinese were still scared with the Malay ship. They have to make sure that this Malay ship do not come too close to their ships. And yet now we have nothing. So I thank you very much for you ladies organizing this, Alhamdulillah, and we hope to also get the help of Prof. Sufyan, people like Prof. Sufyan and others. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. Another question. Apart from the three countries Prof mentioned in the talk today, have there been any work documented to show the rest of the extent of Malay influence, global influence, I would say?
I'm sure there is, but time is limited for me. I did what I can, especially I started digging this when I was holding the chair at Leiden University, actually.
Right.
There I was, I came to a realization that, my God, we were so rich before, in terms of this heritage, this kind of wisdom. But how come we are now so poor? Yeah. And we have been labeled this and that, including lazy, not knowledgeable in anything. So if we come together and organize this kind of discussion often from time to time, and inshallah, we'll find a way to revive those that we have lost.
Okay. Okay, Prof, another question. A short one before I come to a longer one later. Dealing with the women, yeah?
Okay. You should be the one to answer that.
No, that's your story.
Okay.
Okay, Prof. Okay, some say that the Malay habit of Malacca is also similar to the Eskimo people. What is your opinion?
Oh my God, my friend, I must appeal to you. We were talking about something very positive. Now all of a sudden you are dragging us to negative aspects. Yeah.
Oh dear. Okay.
First of all, I don't believe that that is inherently our heritage. Yeah. I think Malata is there everywhere, but since it has been recorded by the colonizers, yeah, that has been made brought to the fore actually,
yeah. Yes.
to the extent that the positive values were forgotten. Today we were talking about positive things, right? Yeah.
Yes.
But when the Westerners came, when our colonizers came, they highlighted those parts,
The negative, yes.
the negative. Yeah.
Okay. So I will now read the question from Prof. Madya, Dr. Azwan.
Wow.
Salam, Professor Salleh Yaapar,
Salam.
one of my favorite scholars.
My God.
Mind-blowing information. Terima kasih. You mentioned that women took part in the migration and maritime sojourn to Madagascar. It would be extremely good if gender lens are also taken into factor in this local knowledge research. Thank you. So is it possible to, well, look at the Malay women as well as the Malay men?
Why not? Yes, obviously. Yeah. And this facts about the about the migration, yeah, from Borneo to Madagascar involving women. Yeah. Although we still do not know. Yeah. In fact, I am in a way quite shy to mention that the research was not done by us.
Oh.
It was done by the Westerners. Yeah. The guys who whose I was quoting just now, and they're all Westerners. They were the ones who came up with the idea that in our research, yeah, very extensive research actually, they managed to record at least 30 women. They were tried.
Women sailors?
They cannot say sailors or what, but the one who managed to arrive there and set up the community are these 30 women. People are still now discussing as to what happened to the men. Very certainly they went out together with their men. Probably they were wife, to this men. Now we do not know what really happened to the men. But the fact that they managed to survive and arrive there and set up a community, and that community lasts until now. And in fact, there was a kingdom, the Marina Kingdom, yeah, with people like Rajoli and all that, coming up.
Well, I believe that during those times, they had certain other, how shall we say, local knowledge, which made them brave, even women, to travel
Yes.
all by themselves.
Yeah.
From Jawa to Malaya. That happened. I mean,
Yeah, that happened. Yeah, that's very
my
close.
husband's
That's very close.
grandmother. That's what
Yes,
happened.
that's
She
very
came by
close.
herself, so
Yeah.
there's also that aspect of, that mystical aspect and that other kind of knowledge
Yeah,
that
the so-called supernatural powers that they had, like this Malay guy,
yes.
that enticed the Chinese, to the extent of making him a hero in Chinese literature, yeah. And unknowingly, even today's Chinese in China still puja or really, put these people on high pedestal.
That's right.
Remember the movie that I mentioned just now,
The Promise.
The Promise,
Yes.
Yeah. They tried very much to depict this guy as the Malay. Yeah. If only they import someone from Malaysia or Indonesia and be the hero there, would be good actually. But the fact that they chose this guy from Korea with Malay facial features, is also good already.
Visually, there is
Yes.
the Malay, the trace of Malay there.
Yes, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Okay, so then there is a question here. Saya ada soalan kepada yang berbahagia Dato. Since
Yeah.
there is a maritime migration happening, is it possible there is Malay influence in the North Sentinel Island, which many people are scared to go and study the indigenous people? I think this is from Jit. Jit sent that question.
Jit. Yeah.
Govinda Jit.
Oh, from Govindajit, our friend.
Yeah,
Okay.
our friend, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's right. Yeah. People are scared to go, and no, not many research have been done by Malaysians actually, even on those Aborigines in Taiwan. Whereas it has been announced to us that these Taiwanese Aborigines are from here.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah,
In
yeah,
the past, we were given the myth that the Malays came from there. You know,
Yes,
no, that was a myth.
yes.
These two guys, Oppenheimer and Santos, have already proven to us that no, those guys in ladies and the males in Taiwan, they were from here. Yami, the Kami, yeah, they were all from here. And when I was studying for my master's in the Philippines, I worked on some folk tales, legends. They were legends saying that people were crossing the straits from the northern part of Luzon to Taiwan. This was where I was first introduced to the idea that, oh, actually the people in Taiwan were from here.
Not the other way around, yeah?
Not the other way around. That has been proven. But we have not done that kind of research here, even after Santos and Oppenheimer have opened the way for us.
Okay. Okay, Prof, I see a very interesting question
Okay.
on Facebook from Cik Husna Azhari.
Oh, my great friend. Okay.
Okay, she
She knows
says,
better than me.
okay, this is about the women, yeah, that story that Dr.
Husna.
Azwan was referring to. Yeah, Cik Husna says, the
The-
chief
It's Prof.
Nakoda,
Husna. Yeah.
oh, Prof, eh?
Ah,
Okay.
yes.
She says, the chief Nakoda was probably a female. And if the 30 women were wives, and so the men they were married to were husbands.
Sure, yes.
So I don't know what is the
Yeah,
question actually.
the issue is what happened to this man, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they might have been attacked by some unknown, and then they were killed. But I still am amazed by the fact that these women managed to settle there and start anew, and bring up generations after generation until now.
Okay.
But I have not answered Prof. Husna's question yet. What is her question? Sorry, I need to drink something.
Okay, we will see. Yes. Okay. So it's actually a comment from Prof. Husna, Dato
Yeah.
Sri, to imply that the women were merely wives is to trivialize their role.
That's the reason why, from the very beginning, I didn't want to speculate,
Okay.
But definitely, I think they were there with their partners. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a possibility too that they set up only the 30 of them set up together. Let's go. You know, there was the time of Sriwijaya. People were very heroic, men, both men and women at that time.
Entirely possible.
That was Sriwijaya.
Yes. Yes.
And they are from the Ma'anyan, the Ma'anyan ethnic group here in Borneo. That's why the language is still the same.
Right. Okay, thank you, Prof.
Most welcome.
And there is one question about the kind of the genealogy of Pantun. I think you can say that. I can't remember whose question it was, but Salam Prof, since Malay people have sailed about 4000 BC until North America, Madagascar, and so on, according to Linda Nori 1996. What is your opinion on the statement that Prof. Diraja Engku Aziz says that Pantun has existed for about 800 centuries, something like that, 800 in century? If I want to say that our Pantun exists earlier than that, how can I prove it? So, yeah. This is always the same question. How do we prove? How do we substantiate?
Yeah, we can only prove if we, in the first place, go all out to do that kind of research, that would enable us to prove. What I came up with is very easy because they didn't need me to do too much. I was only reading what was written by this guy who was working on dictionary, and all that, and then basically a library research. It didn't involve field work. In my case, basically it's only library research that took me back to the early part of 19th century, right?
So archival.
Basically archival. When the book was published in London, it was made available to the whole of Europe and even America. And the writers, that was during the Romantic periods, they were very eager to know about things coming from the East, especially. That's not Orientalism. They were not doing things bad against us. They were promoting, actually accepting. So they started to write using the structure of the pantun. Now the difference now is we have pantun, right? But most of our pantuns are the 4 lines pantun, and that is basically oral. They didn't concentrate on the oral part of the pantun. They concentrated on the written part of the pantun, which is pantun berkait. The pantun berkait is normally written, like the one that he had it in his book, Kupu-Kupu Terbang Melintang, was written. So what was developed there is the written version, written part of the pantun, which is good actually. And the fact that they acknowledged, they didn't change the word, the term. In fact, there is one word which was given the title of Pantun Malais, Pantun Melayu, Pantun Malas, Pantun Melayu.
Okay.
Amazing. That's amazing. Now, if we don't discuss this, people will not know. Our students will not know. They will say, oh, pantun is only used during the kenduri, right?
Masa meminang.
Masa meminang.
Yeah. Okay.
See?
Okay, Prof. Husna has added another point.
Okay, good.
Why wouldn't some of these women be real mariners? Remember the Achinese Lady Laksamana.
Correct, yes.
Right. So this is all very 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 interesting information for students.
Yeah, interesting questions that I think will now encourage us to do things, more. Firstly, in our case, to do more research. Yeah.
Yes.
At the same time, if we can set up various kind of institutes and marine institutes, this and that. That would help a lot of people, including ladies. Don't separate them too much. So now I'm encouraging my students, masters and PhD students, to even come up with thesis on um, our ladies in Kelantan, ladies in Langkasuka, and all that, you know, who were very courageous, very, very courageous. And of course, the ladies of Aceh, and many more actually, yeah. And Prof. Husna also would be able to do that, yeah. We can come together and start our, not only, this is discourse, yeah.
Yes,
But after discourse, we need to do some research,
that's
more
right.
and more research, yeah. Yeah, isn't it interesting?
Yep, very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
not much, in fact, not much has been written on Chat City One Kembang. You see, not much research has been done on her, Chat City One Kembang. Yeah, this grand lady coming from Kelantan.
yes.
The early part of the Sultanate of Kelantan. A lot more actually, yeah.
Okay. All right, so my goodness.
Anything else?
I think I don't know. Have I missed out any questions, Andy? Any questions that were left unanswered?
I think everything has
Everything has been covered?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Make sure that our friends there, the professors, they may have written something there which I cannot read from here. We need to reply.
Okay. In the Facebook, because it's in Facebook. So maybe if there are any questions that were left out, you know, we can ask.
From the chat here.
These are all the questions that we transferred into
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah, Doctor, we have a comment by Professor Madhya, Dr.
Dr. Hadi.
our chairman of local knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Yes, please welcome.
He also commented, also Queen of Patani and the development of Makyum.
Yes. Yeah.
More research on that.
That's right.
Much more and more research should be carried out on them. Yeah. Very much like the City One Kembang just now, the Queens of Patani, yeah, and going back also to Langkasuka. A lot still need to be dug out, yeah.
Yeah, and documented.
And documented.
That's right.
And at the same time, if we can organize, like what I mentioned earlier, we can help government to organize this institute, that institute, going into back to our ancestral achievements of our ancestors in shipbuilding. I really am very, very sad about what has happened to our shipbuilding industry or technology.
Yes. It's on the verge of disappearing.
It has already disappeared.
It's already disappeared.
We used to be the master, actually, as acknowledged by the Chinese here.
Yeah, and perhaps USM.CREATE also can be a space for more
Yes, sure.
more events that that look at important issues like this.
Yeah, sure. We would love to, collaborate with any researchers around the world, like so that we can have more discourse like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, so I think wow, it's already almost 5:30, so
It's
I
okay.
would like to
5:30 is nothing to me. What?
we are all working from home, right?
Yes,
Right, that's right.
I'm working from Pejabat here, from the office.
Yeah, pejabat. Okay. So, so perhaps we need to let Prof. Salleh go. So I will now hand over with many thanks and appreciation to Prof. Dato Seri for your
You
wonderful talk
sure
and for
you have answered most of all the questions there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
okay. Okay,
Can
and I
we hear
will
their
now.
voices? Can we not hear their voices? For example, Prof. Sofia just now. Are there?
Is
I
it
can hear some.
No, sorry, that's my husband.
Or maybe he wants to also give some answers. Your husband?
He's
okay?
actually taking care of my kids outside.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so thank you so much,
You
Prof. Our
put through yourself,
sincerest
Dr. Nurul.
appreciation.
Are you satisfied with my lecture today, Dr. Nurul?
Oh my God, it was wonderful. It was beyond our expectation, and it set the bar very high, Andy, for the next speaker.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm so scared right now because I learned a lot also, and because I'm from Bugis di apa nama suku kaum Bugis, right? So we have
Yes,
this
yes.
pinisi, like
You
macam
see,
it's
yes.
a connection of these Malay songs. So I was wondering whether it has some connection between Bugis
A lot
and
of connections actually. Yeah, a lot of
I see, I
connections.
see.
Yeah. And
That's
the
nice.
one in Bugis survive even much longer, yeah, than the one I discussed here. So
Nice, nice.
when I mentioned Malay here, it was not limited to Semenanjung.
Okay.
Yeah, we never know
Yeah.
where the ships were at the time.
I
They only
see.
mentioned Kunlun, Kunlun Island. Yeah.
Okay.
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 Say hi.
Oh,
Keep track, okay. Need to stay away from.
Okay.
And
So I
also
will.
the what do you call that? Pantun, the
Yes.
Pantun France, the connection. That's very interesting.
Oh, yes. Right. And most of our writers are not aware of this, actually.
Yeah, never heard of it. So
Mm.
I'm interested to learn more about France. Very romantic language.
Yes.
And yeah, okay.
And you never thought about the fact that the
Okay.
French took this pantun from us, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right. So
Okay.
anything else that would you like to say? The
Okay.
last word by Datuk Sri?
Okay.
And
I would like to take this opportunity finally to thank both of you and your organizations. One is USM.CREATE, the other one is the USM
Local knowledge.
Local Knowledge Secretariat, for inviting me, for giving me this opportunity to discuss what I have more or less researched into and made it public and share it with others, hoping that more informations, of this kind or knowledge of this kind is disseminated to our academic societies, and more research could be done, and more cooperation, could be work on, so that we can revive. I would like to see a lot of these things being revived actually. Now, for example, in Malaysia, not many young writers are interested in pantun actually. They are more interested in ghost stories, of course, love stories, yes. But who cares about the pantun? Because they thought the pantun is only used during the ceremonies such as Kenduri Kendara, But no one has taken the to write pantun in the link form, for example, like what the French are doing. Now you can go to many websites, yeah, not only in France but also in America. There are a lot of websites on pantun. Whereas we don't care less about pantun now here. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Seri. Dr. Farhana, you have any last words?
No, just again a very big thank you and our sincere appreciation from the local knowledge group for accepting our invitation and for giving such a wonderful talk today. And we hope that this is, just the beginning of more to come.
Yeah.
Yes.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
And maybe the next session we can have more interactive in WebEx, so that we can
Yes.
ask questions from all that is speaking, your friends all around the world. That doesn't have Facebook. Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. So thank you so much.
I mentioned earlier during our discussion last time that if you have made a recording of this, you can have it put in the YouTube.
Yeah.
Distributed also.
Right. Yeah, that can be done for sure.
Okay.
So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have ended our session today. Thank you so much again, Professor Dato Seri, Dr. Salleh Yaapar, and Dr. Nurul. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Both ada dekat sebelah kan. And
Yes.
thank you so much to all our audience that are participating today, wherever you are. And we really hope that you enjoy the talk. And we have so many upcoming programs throughout the year. So please keep yourself updated with our social media pages on Facebook. And we have Instagram as well as Twitter. And if you have any ideas or planning to organize your programs at USM.CREATE, or if you would like to visit us, please contact me, and we hope that we'll be able to proceed with physical programs once MCO is lifted. So with that, thank you so much. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you again soon, inshallah, and see you at the next program. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum.
Glory to all.